Hey everyone, Zach here, and welcome to lesson 77 of this RTS tutorial series. In this video, we'll set up our status check in our behavior tree to look for our unit's fear levels. That said, we'll also have the chance to finally test out our fear status by checking the status of our characters in game. All that said, fire up your editor and let's get started. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the editor. In this video, we are going to set up our status check for fear, and we are also going to disable and enable player control of units when units are afraid. So the first step we need to do is we need to go to our enums folder. We need to go to our unit status enum, and we need to add in, once I pin this up here, a new status. And the status we are going to add is afraid. All right, that takes care of step 1. Step 2 is to set up our disable movement. So what we're going to do is we're going to create 2 new functions, and we're going to apply one of those functions pretty quickly. So this is really a 2-part step. It's going to be step 2 and 3 to be clear. So the first part is setting up those functions and calling one of them up. So let's go to our units. Let's go to our unit master. And in our unit master, let's just get rid of everything we don't need. We are going to create 2 new functions. And the first function we're going to create is set allow player input. In here, we are going to have one bool value. This value will be input is allowed. We are going to drag off of this. We are going to promote to variable, and this will be input allowed. And then we will have our return. All right, let's quickly categorize these bools that are just sitting out here. And let's also move this to our AI folder. All right, and I'm going to compile this real quick, and I'm going to go to this input allowed, and I'm going to default it to be true. The next function I need to create is get is input allowed. This will be a pure function, and all it's going to do is going to return this value is input allowed as either being true or false. All right, I'm just going to plug that into there. So because we've defaulted this to true, we will allow our units to, when they're spawned in, be controlled by the player. Also, let's move this to the AI folder. Now, I'm going to leave this one open. We don't need the enums, so I'm just going to close that out because we're going to create a new stat in here, actually. But we'll do that for the second part of this video. So what we need to do now is actually check is our input allowed. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to our player controller. And if we go to our player controller, that's the wrong thing. We have this entire set of commands. Here it is, sorry. On what happens if a unit is selected. What we're going to do is we're going to move this rotate construction a bit to the right here. Expand this comment out just so we have room to play with it. And we're going to take everything after get unit details, and we are going to drag this just over here. We need a little bit of room. All we're going to do is we're going to put a branch in, and we're going to plug the true into the stop previous command and nothing into the false. So the reason why we're doing this here is after get unit details, we have the individual unit information. So we can go to our unit control, get our selected unit at this point, because now we've set it in get unit details, and get is input allowed. If it is allowed, then we will let the unit move. Okay, that takes care of step 2. Now, the next step is to disable movement and re-enable movement based on fear. And that is going to require us to set up one more thing inside of our unit master. So let's go back to our unit master. We are going to create a new variable, and this will be resilience. Resilience will be of a type of float, or of type float. We're going to move this to our stats. There we go. And we're going to set this value in a function from ages ago. And I believe that is in our unit under master, set unit features. Right before we branch based on unit sex, we are going to set the resilience level. Now, you might want to create an enum as well that will check, is the level between, say, 0 and 25, and you might want to call them weak-willed, and if it's, between 75 and 100, you might want to call them strong-willed or iron-willed or whatever. So all we're going to do is we're going to grab our resilience. We are going to set it here. We're going to plug that into the branch. And what we are going to do to make this sort of unique to each unit is we are going to get a float in range, or a random float in range. So random float in range. And I'm going to pick 25% as my minimum, so 0.25, and let's just say 100% as our max. So someone might be really strong, and they might have the max level of fear before they actually, have issues. So now that we've done that, what we need to do is we actually need to pass this resilience information along. So we have our get unit stats. All we're going to do in here is take our resilience, and we are going to plug that into this return node. There we go. So now we're going to pass our resilience information along. And I'm going to go back to my AI. I'm going to go to my services, sorry. We have that asterisk because we've updated the enum. So this enum now has more values than it did a minute ago. And we are going to create two new functions in here. Now, I've usually done this as the check whatever level and then the is whatever. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to do this in reverse. We're going to do the is to begin with. So we're going to take the is hungry. We're going to duplicate this as is afraid. And we're going to change the is hungry on the enum here to is afraid. Change the output to is afraid. And then we're going to create a new function. It will be check fear levels. And this one's going to work a bit differently than the other ones we've done. So what we're going to do is we are going to get our unit reference. From our unit reference, we are going to get unit stats. Line that up. Sorry, just going to move that over a bit. And we are going to create two local functions. We're going to create two local variables. So we're going to promote our fear to a local variable, fear local. There we go. And our resilience. So resilience local. And just plug that into there. Do my usual reroute to make it look somewhat nicer. And line that up. All right, so we're going to have our first branch. And this branch is going to be our standard branch we've done previously. So before we've done, for example, in our check fatigued, we've done, is this busy? If not, is this level greater than some value we've chosen? Here, it's going to be the resilience we want to check against. So is our fear level greater than our resilience level? And I'm not doing equal to, I'm just doing is it greater than. If it is greater than, then what we're going to do is we're going to do another check. Because even if someone it might be higher than the resilience level, they might actually be able to bear down and continue. Now, if you want to do something simple, you could just set the fear status here. I don't want to do it that way. I want to have that little bit more of a complex approach. And it's just to show you how, again, to use this approach. It is completely optional. So this branch, what we're going to do is we are going to check, is our fear local greater than twice our resilience? If it is greater than twice our resilience, then what we are going to do is, no matter what, the unit's going to be afraid. It's just not going to be able to handle what's going on around it. So we're going to take our resilience. We are going to multiply this by a float. So float by float. The value there will be 2. So double the resilience. Is double the resilience less than, or is fear greater than, double the resilience? If so, then what we're going to do is we're going to set our status enum. We are going to set it to is afraid. And then we are going to take our status here. We are going to set Blackboard as enum. And the value we're going to pass in is this is afraid. All right, my reroutes in like I usually do. There we go. And finally, at the end of this, we're going to disable our unit's movement. So grab your unit reference, and this will be set allow player input. Leave that as false, and plug that into there. And then we're going to have our trusty return node. All right, so we have 2 falses left to deal with. Let's deal with those quickly. So this first false, what we're going to do is we're going to create a branch here. And this is going to be the branch that even if it isn't double the level where automatically they're going to be set to be afraid, we're checking, you know, are they actually afraid? So even if it is above the resilience level, there's a chance they might still resist. They might, you know, be able to just grit their teeth and deal with it kind of idea here. And what we're going to do for this one is we're going to drag off our condition, and we're going to do greater than or equal to, and it's going to be an integer we're looking for. And the value we're going to plug into this bottom is 3. Now, I'll explain why I've chose 3 in a second. Off this top, we're going to do random integer in... Sorry, I'm just going to do random integer in range. And we are going to set this min value to 1 and the max value to 4. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is, if you look at these nodes together, what we're doing is we're saying there's a 50% chance that they are going to be afraid. So we have numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 inclusive in this range. And then we have 2 of those numbers, 3 and 4, being valid values that will say they're afraid when we go off the true. If you want to make it so it's 75%, you change it to 2. And if you want to make it so it's inclusive of all numbers, and thus you really don't need to do this, you'd make it 1. But I'm going to leave that at 3, so it's 50%. All right. Next, I am going to then grab all of these nodes up here, and I'm going to duplicate them somewhere. I'm not sure what just happened there. All right. So I'm going to grab all those nodes. It's not letting me duplicate. Interesting. There we go. I'm going to duplicate them down there, and I'm going to plug this into the true. Off the false, I am just going to have a return node. And the reason for this is, so once we've gone past this point, certain things are going to happen where we don't want to change anything on this false. If they go from being afraid to not being afraid, it's going to be handled over in this area here. And it's going to be a bit of a confusing logic because we're actually kind of ignoring this if they're already afraid, and then we reduce their fear to not being afraid. So it is a bit tricky to understand. What we're going to do that is we're going to add in another branch off this false. And on this one, what we're going to have here off our condition is our is afraid. And we want to know, so are they already afraid? And we want to know, is user input allowed? Now, you might have realized something. If we've already disabled user input, we've never set it to be re-enabled. And that's the next part we have to take care of. So get is input allowed. All right, plug that into the and there. If these are false, then nothing is going to happen. We'll just do a return. And if it is true, what we will do is we will set our status to idle, and we will set our Blackboard key. So we're going to take these nodes here. We are not going to take the set allow player input. That will be taken care of elsewhere. And we're going to, not sure why it's not letting me duplicate today. There we go. And I just need a little bit more room, actually. I just realized how close to that random it is. There we go. And we're just going to plug that into the true. We are going to change this to set is idle. And then we're going to have our return node at the very end here. All right. So let's actually call this into function here. Or into play. It is a function, so that's a little bit weird of a way to put it. Now, I could do this at the end where, regardless of, the is fatigued, is hungry, it gets called. And, that is an option. We can plug it off the true here. We can go over from this true around the other branch and plug it into there. I just find it's easier to take all of this, move it down, break this, put the check fear level in, and then at the end of this check fear, instead of just the is fatigued, we're going to have two conditions here. If either condition is met, nothing past this point is going to run. So is fatigued or is afraid. So if they're afraid, then it doesn't matter that they're fatigued. They're not going to get the fatigue status. We're also going to put in our behavior tree in case this part doesn't work the way we want it to, that it will ignore the fatigue and hunger levels. So let's just grab our is afraid. Plug that into there. Okay. So now that we've done that, we now need to restore our player control and trigger what will set this event off, or this branch off. And the way we're going to do that, once we've saved everything, so Control S save, is we are going to go to our AI, under our AI controller, and we're going to get rid of our increase fear, we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to go to our decrease fear. All right, I can get rid of that breakpoint. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to change this condition up a bit. So we're going to leave our values that are currently here. We're going to break that, though. We're going to just move this down because we need a bit of room. And I am going to drag off of this. And I'm going to do get is input allowed. I want to know, is this false? If this is false, so not. So is player input not allowed? And what we're going to do down here are true. Then we will set this off and we'll restore player control. I'm going to put a reroute into this. And I'm going to drag off of here. So I'm going to put a reroute into the top one too. There we go. I'm going to drag off of here. And I want to know, is the fear level at least half of the resilience level? So I'm going to get my resilience. I am going to divide my resilience by 2. And I am going to line those up. And I'm going to plug this return value into our check there. All right, let's just line these up so it's a bit nicer and neater looking. There we go. And let's just drag these pins along. Put our and in. So do we not have control of our unit, or does a player not have control of their unit? And is the fear level at least less than half of our resilience level? So this will represent when they regain control of themselves. And when the player regains control of them too. And then we'll plug this into our condition. And then before we set our status, we need one more thing. We need to get our unit reference. We need to, from this unit reference, set allow player input. We need to mark this as true. So if it is true, so if this is true, when we go back to our unit status, If input is now allowed, and they're still being marked as afraid because this hasn't changed, that's why we don't change it here, then we are going to set them to idle. All right, that takes care of everything we need to do in this video. Now, what we can do is we can run our first test of our fear. So let's go to our unit master. Let's go to our fatigue first, just to make sure it is set to 0. It is. Our hunger is set to 0. Now let's go to fear, and let's set it to 0.8. Now, that means there is a 20% chance that our unit, actually less than 20% chance, but there is a chance that our unit will have a greater resilience level, and thus this will not make them afraid, but it's easier than doing 1. All right, let's open up our map. Let's see if we can move that unit. That unit can move. That unit cannot move. That unit can, and that unit cannot. So what we're going to do, let's just maximize this screen, is we are going to select this infantry unit, and we are going to speed up time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause recording and then resume in a little bit when this level is much lower. But what you want to do is you want to watch and notice that these units that we can currently move are able, when their hunger levels are high enough and they're not busy, to go to the barracks. Whereas the units that we cannot move will not go to the barracks until their until their fear levels are much lower. All right, as I said, I'm going to pause the video and I'll resume it when we have reached that point. All right, welcome back to the video. This probably took a fair amount of time. So, as I said at the start of this video, this is why you balance your numbers based on what you want to do in your game. Now you notice it's grayed out on my window, and the reason why it's grayed out is I put a breakpoint in so I knew when to resume. What I did was I found the units, the 2 units, which are 3 and 1 on my list here, that did not have this as true to begin with by putting a breakpoint here. When I put a breakpoint here, I could check all these values. If you had any units that you were able to move, you should have noticed that those units have already gone to the barracks to rest. Now, this then, if we remove that breakpoint, should allow, if I hit resume here, only one of them recovered. They will instantly, because they've been waiting so long for food and sleep, go to get their food and sleep. All right. Now they can't get there because there's an issue where they're still crowding, and we will take care of that a little bit more down the road. This unit, we still can't move. And again, another reason why you might want to balance it is those their fatigue and hunger levels are now both at 100%. But this does demonstrate that our fear and our hunger and our fatigue levels now all work. It's Charlie Wilson's. There we go. And there goes our infantry unit when they regain control of themselves. All right, there we go. Let's make sure all of our units are actually getting what they need. And it looks like they are all reducing. All right, so we are still having a little bit of an issue with the location of the unit in relation to getting into the barracks. And we'll try to resolve that a bit more. But this gives us a rough idea of what our fear will do. Now, we are going to have things in our behavior tree that will cause our fear units to behave differently based on different situations. And that will be the bulk of the next set of videos we're going to do. So that said, if you've enjoyed this video, hit that like button down below and make sure to subscribe and click that notify icon so you know when the next tutorial is out. And if you want to help support this channel further, consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. At upper levels, you will get access to the completed project, and at the level above that, you'll get access to the project file that I am currently using in this tutorial. All of that said, I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.